Hi, I'm Dr. Adam Fields. I'm a chiropractor. Welcome to Health and Care. It's said that we stand on the shoulders of our parents. We see further than them. And one of the most influential people in my life was the president of my chiropractic school. That was Jerry Clum. And I am honored to have his son today, who, as far as diet and nutrition, is seeing further, is a pioneer, is bringing new things and is getting inside our heads and teaching us how to motivate ourselves to eat right. He has a nutrition degree, a chiropractic degree. He's worked in Costa Rica and different parts of the country, and now he just works remotely. I am thrilled to have Dr. Don Clum. Let's talk.
Hey, Dr. Fields, thank you so much for having me. We go all the way back to school. We were in school at the same time. Don't forget that.
Oh, yeah.
But it's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me. I love your show. I can't wait to get into this.
Right on. So tonight we're talking about why diets plateau. I mean, that so many of us we get the motivation and then phew, we flatline, right? And it seems like it's hard to maintain sometimes. Sometimes we either go up or we go down, but just staying in one spot can be hard. Tell us about the plateau. You've worked with so many people around the world with diet, with losing weight. This is not an easy job. There's a lot of psychosocial stuff happening. There's cultural things happening. There's people's history in the past, etc. What's your take on this?
That's a great point. There's a lot going on in the world right now that's unlike any other time in history. Hopefully, it will be like any other time in the future. But even that considered, when we look back and we drill in on the physiology and look at how the body works and why it does what it does, not just look at the number or the results that we want, but look how the body's functioning, we can learn a lot. And I always stick to the basic physiology. And there's two real reasons why we see what we call plateaus. Number one is that you're doing well, you're sticking to your diet, and it doesn't matter what diet you're on. I have my ideas, you probably have yours on what's better and so on. But if you're losing weight and it's working for you and you slow down to or stop for a while, that plateau could be a what we call a law of efficiency issue. A law of efficiency. If you are losing weight and you're successful and you got some momentum, your body's changing and is doing well. You're probably building some muscle, you're probably burning some fat and everything in between. And then you get to a point where what we call the easy fat is kind of burnt off. Because in the beginning, a lot of stuff comes with that fat. It's not just
Why
fat
is it?
cells.
Why is it that why is it that the initial thing is so easy?
Because
What
it's not all fat. The actual rate of fat burning stays the same, but the weight loss drops.
So we're saying
Because what comes,
initially we're losing inflammation, maybe?
yeah, inflammation, a lot of most is some kind of fluid, right? Some kind of fluid. So there could be fluid in our intestinal tract or
Mm.
bulking in there. That's been an issue. There could be inflammation. Inflammation always, edema and swelling is water being moved in the body. When we are insulin resistant, we have issues with our other hormones. Insulin is a bully on the playground, and hormones like aldosterone, which controls our minerals, number one being sodium, which affects our ability to retain or drop water, it gets thrown off. And
Okay,
so in the beginning, you
hold
do
on.
burn fat, but
Well,
you drop a lot of water too.
okay, so you're dropping water. You are burning fat. Let's go back because you're packing a lot in there. This is super interesting. I can't wait to get into it. So number one is this law of efficiency. The law of efficiency is basically what?
So as you keep going, you're burning the same amount of fat, but the body's become more efficient and drop that water. That water has to come. When people say, "Hey, you're just losing water weight," that's fine. Be happy because that water's not helping you. It's part of what's slowing you down. So as that comes off, now you're just down to the fat burning and the efficiency level is going up. And so your body's doing more with what it has. And so the level of fat burning will drop. But that is supposed to happen.
Would
It's
you
like
say
going
the
to the
metabolism
gym.
was the metabolism going down at that point?
No, your metabolism doesn't change. That's a big misnomer. We can talk about that all day if we want to, about how you don't get more calories for working out every day or you get less from being on the couch and so on. That's a difference. That's fun, but that's different,
It's another.
right? No, but the body is doing well and is going through. It's like going to the gym and you start lifting weights.
Mhm.
You lift a certain number of weights or amounts. If you stay at that number, eventually you get stronger. and you lift more weights. Same kind of concept. Your body's getting more efficient and is adapting. As we lose the fat, the easy stuff comes off first, the water, some of the fat, but
Mm.
the important stuff comes off as well. There's the first fats that come out of our body, depending on, this can vary in different diets, are the dangerous fats. And there's several different kinds. One, the primary, most dangerous, is plaquing, or where fat and like kind of like a scar tissue forms in tissues that it's not supposed to be in. Usually we see it first in the liver. The liver, you heard of fatty liver, the number one liver condition in the world and the United States, non-alcoholic fatty liver.
Hmm.
That fat in there stops us from burning the fat off our body. It's
Mm.
being forced in there. It's clogging up the works. So that when we start to lose weight, that has to come out first. There's also fat in the pancreas, similar process. There's fat in our muscles sometimes, like we see in the steak that we like at dinner, the marbling. Great for a steak to eat, but you don't want that in your body. If you're marbling, you're in trouble,
Mm.
right? Then there's also plaquing that goes on in the brain. There's different kinds that lead to type 3 diabetes or Alzheimer's,
Mm.
Parkinson's, and all these kind of dementias. All those scar tissues get broken down as you lose weight if you do certain things. Not everything, but that can be part of what's coming off in the beginning. Eventually that's gone, right? We see it with fasting. We know it happens with fasting. I can't say it happens with every other kind of diet, but when that type of weight drops, it doesn't come back on,
Hmm.
right? And so but once it's gone, it's gone. You can't break down more when it's not there. And so the numbers start to go down, but the efficiency is still the same.
Hmm. So just to put a bookmark on fasting, because I definitely want another
I
talk
know.
with you on fasting. Let's do that next time
I
for
didn't
sure.
want to jump too soon.
Right, right. So we our efficiency, our rate of a law of efficiency, we're plateauing. And what is the
We're not
second?
plateauing. The same amount of fat's being burned, but the extra stuff that's already gone is gone. And so the number doesn't keep dropping at the big numbers as it did, but you're still burning the same amount of fat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just not losing the weight as much.
Right. The number on the scale is not changing
Got it.
as
Okay.
fast. As fast.
So before we get into how to break the plateau cycle, I'm just salivating to get to that, let's talk about that second reason. What would the second reason be why people plateau?
The other reason is what we call, and we're getting into insulin resistance, are the hidden insulin magnifiers in our lifestyle. Insulin is the gateway for fat. That's the main job of insulin. It's not to regulate blood sugar like everyone thinks and says. Insulin determines whether we burn fat or we store fat. That's life or death in our evolution. That's insulin's job. Okay.
So let's go through the pathway there because the word is used so much, and I've heard you use it so much. Insulin resistance. Let's give me and everybody listening, what happens? What's that pathway? What does that look like inside our bodies?
Yeah. Well, insulin is the gatekeeper for fat. And so when we're eating, depending on whether insulin's on the job or not, that'll determine whether we're taking that energy that we're eating and we're using it to build our body and use it for energy, or stick it in our bank vault for fat.
Store it.
That store it. So when insulin's there and is yelling strong on the scene, we're storing it. Insulin's a saver. Think of your grandma. Put this away for half of this away for college or whatever they're telling you. Tell you save, 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 save. That's insulin. Always wanting to save. So if insulin's
So
there,
somebody has a high insulin diet, they're saving, they're storing,
yep.
and that would be
That doesn't even
obviously
matter.
simple
Some of
sugar.
what they're eating, even if it's low calorie, will still be stored as fat. It's powerful. Hormones are powerful, and insulin is one of the most powerful ones we have. We can activate it anytime we want with our diet, exercise, the way we move, the way we think, all sorts of things. But when insulin's there on the scene, yelling at the workers, all they can do is store that fat. It's
Mm.
not going to energy. It's not going to building muscle. It's not going to anything else. It's going to fat.
Hmm. So really,
So
sugar and high insulin foods are really driving weight gain.
yes, and behaviors. Insulin, if you're gaining weight or you have weight to lose and you can't, that's called weight loss resistance. Then you have an insulin issue. Call it insulin resistance. Eventually, it's metabolic syndrome, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, obesity, the whole nine yards. It's all insulin centric,
Hmm.
right? So, but if you have extra weight that you've been trying to lose and you can't, or you go up and down, up and down, up and down, you're tired of it, or you have or you gained a lot of weight over the last few years, any extra body fat that's from insulin. We've been driving insulin the wrong way, basically. We're letting that grandma stay on our shoulder with all the money we get and it's going in the bank when we want to be spending, right?
So we need to get rid of grandma,
We need
unfortunately.
to get rid of grandma. We love grandma, but once in a while, that's why she's there. But if she's following us around, we don't get any of our cash. We don't get
Hmm.
any of our cash. We got a bunch of money sitting in the vault, but we can't touch it because grandma's right there. And that's grandma insulin.
And this is going to be a big statement because we've heard so much calories in minus calories out, right? How does that come into play, or are we talking about you could have a 2,000 calorie diet and have high insulin levels versus a 2,000 calorie diet with low insulin levels, and one you're going to lose weight and the other you're going to gain weight? Is that could that be?
That's true. Now, listen, I'm not saying that calories don't exist or
Mhm.
that there's not energy in food or there's not a balance. There is, but we cannot calculate it. We cannot determine it. If you think you're calculating it, you're probably wrong and probably against yourself. It doesn't work that way. Because remember, when we eat food, it's not all energy. Also goes to building our body, repairing our tissue, right? Some of it goes to energy. Some of it does. Some gets stored as fat no matter what. Some never gets used as energy, right? How do you calculate that? In the same model, we burn certain foods with higher caloric output in the morning than the afternoon. When we're happy than when we're sad. There's a lot of factors involved in this. It's not a linear equation. Not to mention that the science of calories has a 25% error rate built into it. So every gram of carbs that you're eating, we calculate 4 calories. Could be 3, could be 5. Don't know, but that's part of the equation. You have to be ready to assume 25%. That's a big margin. Never mind, count it correctly to reduce it to try to lose weight. Near impossible, if not impossible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Okay,
yes, a lot of people when they come to me, we get them eating more calorically and they lose weight
that's amazing.
because you can eat a lot and if there's no insulin there, it's not going to fat. Think of type 1 diabetics before we had insulin. It was terrible. Children, they wasted away. They didn't die in a day. They died over time because they could not store any of that energy. They had to have they were eating constantly. They didn't matter what they fed them. Ate anything they want. Went right through them and they wasted away and they died. That's
Mm.
why when insulin came about, it was a miracle drug. Saved those children's lives. And that model pervaded until now, which is not the model for most people. Type 2 diabetes is very different than type 1 diabetes. Type 1 is insulin deficiency. They don't have it. They need insulin to live, to be able to function normally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Type 2 is you burnt out that process. You spent your insulin already and you've exhausted the system and you're on the other end. You might still need insulin eventually, but not for a completely different reason. You've been producing too much.
Producing too much.
Very different. Too much and too constant. The constant overexposure to insulin over time is what drives insulin and all chronic disease, and including aging,
Mm.
or at least accelerated aging.
So this is probably the most common condition we have in America here.
This is the most common medical condition seen in the world, whether your doctor knows it's there or not. It is the most common for
Is
sure.
too much insulin being pushed into your system and storing too much fat and then creating all kinds of inflammation in the body, plaquing in the body, heart disease, you name it.
Diabetes, heart disease, cancer is a metabolic condition. This is a metabolic issue.
Mm.
Uh, Arthritis, inflammatory states. They're also sympathetic metabolic issues. This is a metabolic issue. Insulin's at the center of all of it. You cannot have a chronic disease that's not centric in insulin because that's the mechanism. That's what drives it. It is everywhere. And when they actually tested people, can you imagine what percentage of Americans are actually metabolically fit?
I
There's
don't.
a classification, blood test, they did the whole thing. Only less than 12%
Oh my.
of Americans are metabolically fit. That means 88% are sick. They're sick,
Yeah,
you
we
know?
a
That's a
six.
lot. That's tough. And most of them don't know it.
Right. And we think that a good healthcare system is going to make us healthy, but really most of the power is in our own hands, in our knife and fork, in our
Well,
attitude.
they first have to tell you if you're healthy or not, and they don't do that,
Hmm.
right? There's over 90 million pre-diabetics walking around out there, right? 90 million, and 90% don't know they have it. 90%. They've
Mm.
never been told. They may not even know it exists. Their doctor definitely hasn't flagged it. And 25% of people with type 2, full blown diabetes, they don't know.
Mm.
25%.
So right now we are talking to people that might have pre-diabetes or full blown.
Or type 2, yeah. Right now,
What
guaranteed,
do they
every
do?
time. It doesn't matter if there's 10 people in the crowd or 1,000. There are people right now. It's 1 in 2 adults are expected to get diabetes. Or, I'm sorry, 1 in 2 adults have diabetes or pre-diabetes right now.
Mm. So
If
in
you're
this
married, that's you or your wife. Who is it?
dietary plateaus, this is causing moods, all kinds of inflammation in the body, etc. So
Insulin is the bully on the playground when it comes to hormones. And when insulin's out and screaming, everything else goes crazy. So all sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, human growth hormone, they're all thrown off. Then you get downstream to things like stress hormones, cortisol, thyroid. They're all thrown off. Then it gets all the way into the neurotransmitters in the brains for mood, for dopamine, serotonin. No one is playing like they should because insulin is just terrorizing the entire playground.
mm,
And insulin wins because insulin is life or death. Testosterone's not life or death today. Maybe in the future, but insulin is. Estrogen, not today. Cortisol, not today.
mhm.
Dopamine, none of that. But insulin is. So when insulin screams, everybody listens.
So I mean, listening to you right now, right? Because I eat a pretty omnivorous diet, as close to the way things are put here on the planet as possible. But it almost seems like the keto fad is the way to go. Listening to you.
Keto, we were doing keto concepts before the term keto. I remember when it came out, I thought that was the silliest term. I had the basic human eating plan that was part of my practice. Then we had the healing high fat version of the basic, which would now be keto. The basic human eating plan would be more like a paleo, right? It's been around a long time, and we've always, probably since very early on, incorporated some kind of fasting as well, which is essentially a keto diet when you're not eating. And we can go into what that looks like, right? So yes, but keto doesn't always mean low insulin, and that's the problem with keto. I used to teach keto. I did finger pricks, monitors, the whole 9 yards. I was on board until I saw enough people long enough to see that it had the same problems as every other diet out there. And I was like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be different than all of those. And the reason is insulin, not ketones.
So how can you be can you have high insulin and be in ketosis? No,
No,
no. So
not naturally.
how are these people on the keto diet and still having high insulin levels?
Well, they're not on the keto diet.
They're not.
That's the thing. Insulin determines whether you make ketones and use them or not.
Mm,
Nothing else. Not your carb count, not your body weight, not your activity level. If insulin is there, you are not producing ketones, which means you're not ketogenic and you're not in ketosis.
mm,
Right? That's a determining factor. It's not your carb number. Independent of carbs, proteins, fats, insulin decides.
hmm.
She's the boss.
Insulin is the boss. So it takes precedence over everything. So
So, for
really,
example, you can have a meal with 4 grams of carbs,
mhm.
almost nothing, and high insulin exposure,
You're
and you won't
kidding.
go into ketosis.
How is that?
Well, part of that is, it comes down to those hidden insulin magnifiers that stop everyone who's been losing weight from losing weight and plateauing.
Give me an example.
Well, first, we have to agree that if insulin's on the scene, fat loss stops. You're either a sugar burner or a fat burner. If you're burning fat and here comes insulin, it's turned off at the mitochondria at your cellular level. It's not like a choice.
Hmm.
It's a mechanism. Okay, insulin's low, then you can have an opportunity to burn fat, and when you burn fat, you produce ketones, and that's a keto diet, right? But if insulin's there, trumps everything. Got that right?
Hmm.
So they know that carbs are the number one stimulator of insulin. 23% of our overall insulin secretion comes from carbohydrates, mainly flours, rice, potatoes, starches, things like that, sugars.
Would you call those refined carbohydrates?
Yeah, they are definitely the strongest. You're high pressed to go high insulin eating carrots and celery and eating eggs off the farm. Not going to happen. In a natural state, high insulin and high sugar in the body high insulin. And let me back that up. In a natural state, you can't be in ketosis and have high sugar or insulin at the same time. Okay, you can't do that. Here now you can. You can do that. High fat and high sugar doesn't exist in human diets until modern times.
Mm.
That's the culprit. That's processed food.
Putting them together.
So something that has high sugar and high fat, completely abnormal to the body, has no idea what to do with it. Doesn't have a mechanism for it. Something that's high insulin, might not be high sugar, and high fat, same thing. You can't be in a state of ketosis and insulin at the same time. You just can't do it.
Mm.
It'll trump it out. It doesn't
So
happen.
what you're saying is the body's either burning insulin or fat, right? So if you,
It's either burning sugar or fat as primary.
I'm sorry, sugar.
And those two states of the body are opposing. You can't be in both. It's
Mhm.
like being in a room and saying the lights are on and off. Really, it's one or the other,
Right.
right? Same thing. They're like a teeter-totter. One goes up, the other goes down. It's parasympathetic, sympathetic in the nervous system, right? Those two states are called the repair state and the fed state. Fed state, as it sounds, high insulin, usually sugar, fed, right? Turns off all fat burning, turns off healing, turns off detoxification, turns off all of that because it's in feed mode. Feed me, feed me, feed me, right? The repair state is when we're not fed. So as we come out of the fed state, we go into the repair state, and that's where we rebuild our body. That's where we burn fat. That's where we detoxify, and that's where we heal. Problem today, more so than the carbs and food choices, even possibly, is that people are in a chronic, constant fed state all day, all night for years on end. The body has no chance to repair, burn fat, lose weight, or detoxify.
We're eating
It
all
just
day
can't.
essentially.
When the big studies that came out a few years ago, they showed that most Americans eat in a 15-hour window during the day.
Hmm.
15 hours. Basically, when they get up to when they go to sleep,
They just
all day long, eating, snacking, biting, drinking, eating, snacking, biting, drinking, something all day long.
hmm
I think it was 50% of those people will narrow it down to 12 hours, right? And that's still, in my world, that's a long time. That's still all day. The people who actually get 8 hours or less are probably in the single digits, the reality of it. So most people eat and graze, either nibble, bite, drink, or eat all day long.
right, which
When they ask
doesn't
them, how many
mimic
times do you eat?
it doesn't
Hmm?
mimic like it doesn't mimic how we where we came from, right?
Hmm.
Lack of now we have refrigeration, we have packaged foods, we have things that are freeze dried prepared for us. We have the luxury of being able to just have a snack with us all the time and just munch 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 munch, and we
And
never
we do.
and we never do. It's amazing. And I know fasting, we're not going to get into fasting now, but I mean, it's like I'll be like, oh, my brain doesn't work as well as it does right now. And boom, I do that fast. I do a 72-hour fast. And it's just, oh, I'm back. Things are clear. Vision's
That's
better. Everything.
built into us. We are supposed to go through that, and we don't. We don't feast too much. We famine too little. That's the
Mm,
problem in our culture. Our body is designed to work with periods of downtime.
hmm
It's just meant to happen, and we don't do it. Insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, all these things, they are natural states. They are natural states. Other animals, insects, birds, they get that too for a short period of time. The ones that do, like for example, bears get metabolic syndrome, what we would call insulin resistance, right before they hibernate as they put on their weight. And then they hibernate and they come out of it. Birds get metabolic syndrome. They get what we would call insulin resistance right before they migrate. They feed up and then they fly for thousands of miles and they burn it off.
Right.
Fish even get metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance when they have to go dormant for a season where there's no food. Certain fish do that, right? And so anyone that hibernates or has to go long distance or has a time of their life where they know they don't they're programmed not to get food, they all go through this. The problem is we're living in that. We don't hibernate, we don't go long distance, and we don't go without food. So
hmm
we're in the constant fed state, and that breaks us down. The fed state, constant fed state, breaks you down. The repair state's what builds you back up, and we're not getting it.
So we need to get into repair state, and
We
that
need
is
to get
one of
prepared.
those ways to break this plateau. Then,
If anything, you just got to think we got to get out of the fed state. Just
mm,
think that way, just get out. We have to not be in that state constantly. Repair and fed are both vitally important in our body. You have to have both, but they're not 50-50 partners. Okay, they're not. You want to be in a little bit of fed and a whole lot of repair. And we're the opposite.
mm,
And that's what throws off our sleep, our other hormones, our sex hormones, our mood, and the whole ball. And our circadian rhythm keeps get going and downhill, downhill. And so we see the traditional American end of life, which is horrible, suffering, expensive, preventable.
right, right. They're dying to the beep of a monitor. Having the organs taken out one at a time. Not a good experience, right? You want to be the candle.
Especially diabetics.
It's out, right? The diabetics. Oh, I have them come into my office.
They rank number two of the worst end of life experience, only to cancer, to advanced cancer.
Mm,
It's essentially your body's rotting from the inside out because you're in a constant breakdown mode and never get out of it. And you
mm,
just break down over time and it's gone.
okay. So if somebody's listening right now, basically, you guys, if you've been suffering trying to get through your diet weight loss goals and you're not, there's a good chance that your body has insulin problems and you need to bring those sugars down, right?
It's a good place to be, to think everybody has insulin problems,
Mm.
and now try to prove that you don't. Because I mean, 88%. I've had metabolic syndrome twice. I've gone through stuff. I come from big stock. My stock.
Mhm.
My family. I'm 25 pounds right now, lighter than when I graduated high school. I've gone up and down a lot, right?
Mhm.
And I've been in that state. I know that's a part of why I work so hard at it, right? It happens, but you can come out of it. And we're meant to go into it, and we can come out of it. That's the whole reason why we seem to gain weight before summer and things like that, and then we come out. It's not because of the bikini, because we have natural rhythms. This is why it's the same thing that drives our addiction. Addiction is based on an evolutionary pathway that kept us alive,
Mm.
but now it's killing us.
Right.
Food addiction, number one. It's the
Mhm.
same with alcohol and other drugs. It's the same. What's the same pathway? It's the
Right.
same pathway.
Right.
So it's the molecule of more, makes us want more. And
It
but
is.
now
I feel for
problem.
these people. I have people come into my office that are, 350, 400 pounds. And that current is so strong. They've been saying yes, 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 yes. And just all of a sudden you've got to say no, or you've got to change. Um,
It's physiology.
it is.
They've changed. Yeah, it's like giving someone who, if I gave you 12 shots of tequila in the next 30 minutes and said, drink them all, but go ahead and don't get drunk.
Mm,
You can use all the willpower you want. You can meditate, you can do all these different things, but you're going to get drunk. You just drank 12 shots of tequila, right?
mhm,
Anyone would. That's what happens. Same thing. And then we see them as these larger people, not motivated and less energy, and we think that's why they got heavy. It's not. They changed first. That expression is a symptom of it. That's a symptom of it. The lack of energy, the motivation, the indecision, and the
this,
the choices and the impulsivity is a symptom that can go away when you correct the hormones first, even before the weight.
oh, interesting. So, what's step one for these people?
Everybody, step one is stop snacking.
Mm,
3 meals a day. That's it. I'm not taking any food away from you. I'm not telling you to change a thing. All right, I don't care what you're eating. Just eat it 3 times a day, and only 3 times a day. That includes drinks like coffees and sodas and stuff. You can have them. Keep drinking them, but in your meal. Everything in between is water or like a tea or something like that. No calories and no artificial calories.
mhm,
That's step one. I've worked with, in my programs in population health. They now help tens of thousands of people. We've had thousands go through cohorts. I've worked with groups of hundreds at a time, from hospital surgeons down to the people who pack in the shipping containers. Everybody, right? I worked one on one with hundreds of people all across the board intently with this. This can change, and the first step is 3 meals a day for everybody. The Olympic athlete, the person who's 400 pounds doesn't know what to do. The CEO, guess what? 3 meals a day. You got to start with that. There's two types of people that have a problem with that. One is eating multiple meals, multiple snacks all day long, and they got to condense that down to three. That can be hard, not undo, not not unbearable at all, but it can be a shift, obviously. Then there's people who have dieted and done things and dieted and done things, and now they're eating maybe two or one and a half meals a day, and they have to expand it to three, and they have a hard time too, a little bit. Not unbearable, but they have to do it. We have to reactivate these mechanisms that we've driven dormant. We have to bring them back. We're activating the insulin pathway is primal. We're talking primal. We're talking as deep as it gets. And a lot of these reactions have just been numbed out, and we got to bring them back. We got to bring them back if we want it to change. So 3 meals a day, step number one.
So what's happening in their physiology once they go from snacking, they're eating an average of 18 to 23 meals a day, which many of us do. And I know, I mean, I have nuts, so I always have like pistachios on my counter, or I have mixed nuts, like raw organic mixed nuts. And I go by there in my house, and oh, I'm munching it, I'm munching it, I'm munching it, I'm munching it. And what's going to change in my body going from 23 meals a day to 3 meals a day?
Your overall insulin exposure over time. That's number one. Not the amount, not the spikes. We just need to narrow down that exposure. We're overexposed. Insulin is natural, it's normal, it's kept us alive. It's not the enemy. How we trigger it and make it what we make it do, that's the enemy. It's our fault still. Okay. So by not snacking and eating just 3 meals a day, without you can even eat more than your normal day in those 3 meals, and it'll still help you. You'll move in the right direction metabolically. You can even lose weight because your insulin has a chance to come down. Because if not, what happens? You eat, it goes up. It comes down. You snack, it goes up. Your blood sugar might still be coming down. They're not the same thing. And then all day, just like a volleyball at a rock concert, just popping that thing up all day long. And at night, you end with it high. Then you have trouble going to sleep. You can't stay asleep. Cortisol pops into there. It's hard to wake up. You need that coffee. And man, we got a ball that's rolling. It's hard to stop.
So we need a nice rhythm. We need a nice rhythm. Um,
No, you don't need a nice rhythm. You just need it 3 meals a day. I don't
yeah,
care if they're
meaning it
different
goes
times every
up,
day.
it's processed, it comes down, it goes up, it's processed, it comes down.
The body actually likes variables more than constants. And part of our problem is the constant. When you're eating all day, you're in a constant fed state. You're
Mm,
not dropping out and going, you're not going back and forth.
there's no
We
repeat.
need more back and forth. We need to turn things on and turn them off, turn them on and turn them off. I call them the start, stop, start genes. They're those primal genes. And we've numbed them out because we live a life of constant
Right.
temperature, constant light, constant airflow, constant flat feet on the ground. Everything's constant, right?
Fascinating.
And the body breaks down, can't handle it.
Hmm.
It's meant to adapt all the time. It's like driving a high performance car in first gear all around town,
Mm,
nothing else. Eventually, it's going to break. You can get there in first gear. You might redline a few times, but that car is going to break down. So do
fascinating.
we.
Interesting concept. I haven't heard it before, but it makes sense. With posture, right? Somebody's forward head posture, and they have that constant posture over that laptop, and finally the muscles just go, okay, we're going to hang out here. I'm just going to contract, and then they're in chronic spasms. And I tell people, drink a ton of water, get your ergonomics better. You're going to have to get up and go to the bathroom and get back, at least every half hour, which will hopefully stimulate you moving. But yeah, that's fascinating. The constants are not good.
They kill us. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but moderation will kill you. Is what I tell people. It's just you can't. Can't. That leads us into these hidden insulin magnifiers. There's a lot of them that we don't know about. You
Hmm.
can start if you did a diet that worked and you stopped. If you just do these things, you'll start losing weight again. Well, I don't care what diet. It could be the junk diet, the cookie diet, the keto diet, or my insulin friendly diet. You will start to lose weight again if it worked for you before
Let's hear it.
without changing anything else. One, 3 meals a day.
3 meals.
Yep. Two, stop intermittent fasting.
What? Stop intermittent. Hey, hold on a minute. This is like the biggest trend going right now here, Don.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Stop
It's a problem.
intermittent.
Most people don't do it right. Most people don't do it right, right? Intermittent fasting used to mean we do a 24-hour fast or more over a period of time, usually 4 times or more during the year, and you plan them on your calendar. That was intermittent fasting.
Hmm.
Skipping breakfast every day is just most people's excuse to be disorganized or whatever, So that's not the same thing. I'm a little old school that way, so that's my little bit grouchy part, right?
Right.
So Intermittent fasting, you know, you can do it wrong. There's dangers in intermittent fasting. We know that from big studies, lots of numbers, enough to say, hey, you can't just skip breakfast and then think you're intermittent fasting. And you can lose weight that way. Anything you change, you'll lose weight. But so
Mhm.
don't get fooled by that. You can really increase your metabolic risk numbers. Now I'll go through why.
Okay.
If you want to skip breakfast, do so every other day or 3 days a week or 4 days a week. Do not do it. And remember, constant. We don't want the constant. Don't do it the same every day.
Hmm.
Studies show that the longer you wait to eat your first meal after you wake up, the worse your metabolic health can be.
Interesting.
Okay. Worse being after 3 hours or more. So 3 days a week, I make sure I eat a breakfast within an hour waking up. Whatever I have to do, I got to change my schedule. I do. That way I have a variable. Okay. Now I don't qualify for those bad statistics. Okay. That's number one. Number two is you don't eat your last meal after 7 o'clock. 6 is even better because you just magnified your insulin response. That's what happens when when you don't eat breakfast. Your insulin overall response gets higher. It's like it's ready, 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 and it finally blows up when we do eat. So your overall exposure during the day backfires. So when you eat too late, the same thing. That last meal, every meal after you start eating, especially if it's late, magnifies that response. So that last meal is too late. You just got hit by a bunch of insulin before bed. That's going to increase your metabolic health risks. Okay, unhealthy. So you stop around 7, if not by 6 for sure.
So how
Third,
is that changing things? I mean, are we more likely to store fat when we're sleeping, or would?
you're more likely to store fat when there's high insulin. And if you're eating your last meal late, you have way more insulin than you would have if you didn't. Same food, you have less insulin. So that insulin is going to make you store more fat. Yeah.
Okay, but wait
Or
a minute.
not burn fat.
Last meal at 8 o'clock versus last meal at 5:30.
Mhm.
What's the difference there?
Significant more insulin, 50 to 150% more insulin produced from the same meal.
Just based on the time of day? Wow. That's well.
And when you started. If you started late, it's even worse.
So if you
If all
start,
you're doing is shifting your day of eating back by skipping breakfast and eating later, you're coming. There's a storm coming.
oh, interesting. So wake
So
up.
that's two things. Eat when you wake up, at least a few days, right? Don't intermittent fast every day. Don't make your last meal too late, at least not every day. Remember, you can change these things up.
Hmm.
And then don't make your last meal your biggest meal ever.
Mm.
If your last meal is your biggest meal, you just got a big magnifier of insulin. Okay. We talk, metabolically on paper, it looks like it's best to have your biggest meal for breakfast, medium for lunch, small for dinner. The whole king, prince, pauper concept 50%, 35%, 15%, wherever you want to break it down. If your biggest meal of the day is dinner, you just blew up your insulin response.
Hmm.
And if it's late, you blew it up even more. And if you delayed breakfast, you blew it up even more. Now you got three strikes against you.
So what's interesting is I'm dealing with.
And we haven't even talked about what is in that meal yet.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so really quick, I just want a diversion. I know you and I can just keep talking and talking, but I just quick question here. Uh, I'm big into inflammation, right? I'm doing cranial adjustments through the nose. I'm doing like stuff in the back of the throat for eustachian tube dysfunction and snoring and sinus problems and all this stuff. And so my big thing is get people's inflammation levels down. And with your knowledge, how is inflammation and insulin tied together?
We need more inflammation. We need lots more inflammation. The problem is not too much inflammation. We need to increase our resolution. There's a bell curve for inflammation. Goes up inflammation, comes down resolution. We can we're not coming down. Why? That's a sympathetic versus parasympathetic state. That's a fed versus repair state. If you're in the fed state, you can't come back down. You're not
Mm,
going into repair. You're not going into healing. So you're in constant inflammatory state. You get out of that fed state and you will drop inflammation. I'm going through a bunch of that. I just moved back to Washington. I forgot about how damp it is and the mold and the stuff. And I've puffed up and gone, and so I'm having to reassess and get my stuff together. Right. So I have a quick reminder of what inflammation can do short term and long term.
mm,
Right. And the key is not to avoid inflammation, is to crank your resolution. That's what we want because inflammation will keep you alive. That's
mhm.
an immune response, right? It's not bad. You want that. You want it to be there when you need it. but you need to be able to turn off that alarm when it's over.
Right.
And if you
It's
never
having
get
a
in the repair
muscle
state, you can't.
needs to relax and contract. Oh, that's great.
Expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction.
Okay. All right. So now, as far as getting rid of that dietary plateau, we've gone deep into insulin now. It's key. We need 3 meals a day, and we eating no eating after six or so. And do you want to go into
Don't make your last meal the biggest.
what to eat?
Yeah, well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So now we know, don't eat delay breakfast too long. Don't eat too late. Don't make it the biggest meal. And when you are eating, you want to stay insulin friendly. Keto can be very insulin friendly. Usually is, but it's not always, and it can throw you off. Insulin friendly, there's a difference between insulin and ketones. You can have a food that's very low insulin, it's very low carb, and still crank insulin. Like, for example, on a keto diet, protein powder, it's all over the place. They put it in their banana waffles, and they make it in their breads, and they use almond flour, same concept. But those crank insulin more than anything. 30 grams of protein in my hands as a chicken, 30 grams of protein as a powder I mix in a drink, dramatically 700% difference in insulin response.
Fascinating. Okay, I do a lot of those protein powders. Should I even? I mean, I do a smoothie, and a lot of people do smoothies. I recommend smoothies, right? The metal detox smoothie and all these smoothies. But these protein powders aren't the answer. Is it the fact that they're so blended? Like, what if I take hemp seeds and I put them in a blender and I'm just, hemp seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, and I'm
They,
pulverizing them
the,
so small? Is that making them like you're talking about?
yes,
It is.
yeah, it's particle size.
Mm.
Remember, when you eat food, there goes one of my lights right there.
Okay, you're
Just
still
dropped.
looking good.
When you eat food, you go through a lot of responses. You see it, you eat it, you chew it, you swallow it. There's stretch reflexes. Your body prepares. It goes down. Insulin is not determined by the nutrients getting in your blood. It's interpreted by some hormones in your gut. They're called incretin hormones. This is a whole nother topic, but it feels the food, and so it interprets it, and it tells the body how much insulin to make. When your body interprets food, the insulin response is very low. When it interprets something made like a powder, like a mix, or a liquid food, it freaks out. It doesn't know what it is, and it hyper responds.
Okay, go down the road just a little bit. It's so fascinating. So, incretin, give this to me again.
Incretin.
Tell me
Yeah,
about
incretin hormones. They're in the upper part of the GI tract. They determine 70% of our insulin response,
it.
our first phase. And that's before whatever we ate is in our blood and go into the pancreas. Pancreas response is secondary, up maybe 30%, and it's not till later. It's not a big deal. Diabetes is determined by the first response. So think of these things as like they're when people are coming, like people when you leave Walmart, they're making sure that you got what's on your what's in your cart is on your receipt, right?
Right.
They're making sure it matches up. These what these guys do. Food's coming in, it's making sure it makes sense, it adds up, and it knows how to respond. Something doesn't make sense, the lights go off at Walmart, the sirens. Same thing in your body. Those gatekeepers say flood with insulin. Something's wrong. Flood insulin.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom.
So it's telling us even the texture, how much this thing is processed, macerated. So really, you want your eyeballs to look at a whole food, put it in your mouth, chew it. It mixes with the salivary amylase. It's doing its natural innate thing, going down into your gut. And even what about like
Well, in
almond
Japan,
versus
they
almonds,
did a
right?
great they did a great study in Japan. They took a bunch of foods and they broke it down. The example I like to use is apples. They gave people apples and they let them eat them over whatever period of time, 20 minutes, and they measured their insulin. So that's apples. Then they gave them the same amount of apples made into a sauce, and they had to eat it over the same amount of time, maybe 20 minutes.
Mm.
They did it They had a 50% higher insulin response.
Oh,
Then they gave them apple juice. It made them the same amount of apples, had to drink it over the same amount of time. And then they measured the insulin response, 150% insulin response.
oof.
Same carbs, same macros. That's what I tell people. You can count your carbs, you can count your ketones, same macros, 150% different response.
That's
Significant.
that's incredible.
That's
Um,
a lifestyle magnifier.
are you? I mean, I am definitely. It just seems I do a lot of green juice. Um, would you kind of be wary of that?
If you have any inclination that you have a metabolic issue, I would stop for a while.
Hmm.
If you don't, then maybe you're fine with it. These things aren't bad inherently,
Hmm.
but if you're doing it in a state that's already stressed and in trouble, you might have to stop it.
Right.
You
Right.
know, there's no never ever things out there for the most part, outside of maybe addiction and other things, serious, but there are things that you got to stop it right now. And if you ever go back to it, you got to be careful, right? That's just what happens. And so if you don't, that's why some of these diet programs for diabetes say keep eating all your same foods. I'm like, you're screwed. You're screwed because what you do is you eat the same foods, you eat less of them in different patterns, but you're eating less calories and you're spreading out during the day. Your blood sugar looks good, but you're just getting the same insulin exposure.
Mm.
Good luck. That's why the diabetes prevention program, national one from 1982 on, has failed. Has not prevented diabetes. It has postponed it in some people by 3.5 years, but they still got it.
Mm.
And the statistics in the control group showed that people who did the diet had more diabetes than people who didn't. And
Mm.
that's a traditional weight loss model: multiple meals, multiple snacks, low fat, low calorie, get your steps.
Mm.
That's why we don't do any of that. We just do, you're better off just doing the opposite because it's part of what's causing the problem.
How deep
But
in?
some people do lose weight.
I love this. Is so fascinating. How deep is someone? Okay, so you like you're saying you have metabolic syndrome, you have pre-diabetes, you have full-blown diabetes type 2. Um, how deep is someone into diabetes type 2 and you can still get them out of it?
That depends. There is a factor in that.
I
If
mean,
they
you
just
hit the
got
brakes,
diagnosed in
you're
the last
already off the cliff. I mean, how?
if they got 2 years, they just got diagnosed, or 2 years, they're only on some of the more oral medications, pretty easy, pretty quick. If they've been 10 years and they're still on orals, good chance, pretty good chance. They got to do the work, right? Don't let's not
Right,
joke around.
right.
If they've been 30 years and we're on orals, now they're on insulin and the heart stuff that comes later, which is all textbook, we might be able to get them to not be on insulin and maybe one oral, maybe come off. I don't know. That's tougher. That's a
Mhm.
long time, right?
Right.
Down the line. But is that effort worth it? Absolutely. Can add years to life. The average diabetic loses 14 years, 12 to 14 years, man or woman,
Ooh.
off their lifespan. And the last 10 years is miserable and it causes bankruptcy for most people.
Hmm.
What kind of legacy you want to give your kids, right? Come on. Debt,
I mean,
short life. You don't want to
all
see
the
your
money in
kids.
the world, leave your kids. It's better to leave your kids. You're a healthy person. You're not a
Oh,
burden to
yeah.
them. You're
Be
you're at
with
their
them,
wedding in your
right?
80s and you're dancing. And
How
you're.
many weddings will be missed for 12 years, 14 years? How many grandkids getting married? How
Mm.
many graduations? That's a lot of time. 12 years, 14 years. At
Mm.
that point, as a grandpa or grandma, you're missing some prime experiences. That's terrible. And it's costing you everything you own. And it's miserable. And number one problem that comes after, dementia. We lose ourselves.
Mm. Mm.
It's terrible. And it sounds very like dramatic, but it is. If you've seen people go through it, it is dramatic.
It is dramatic. You're getting in my
And it's
head about.
preventable. It's preventable. We've seen so many. I had a consult yesterday with a gentleman, 19 years, type 2 diabetic, tried everything, lost weight up and down. Bottom line, did the program, incorporated the fasting, all these principles, and I still got a couple more magnifiers I haven't even gone over. And he lost 54 pounds in the first 18 weeks, and all his blood numbers, no medications. His doctor was so shocked that he changed doctors. The doctor didn't know what to do with him. Right? That bizarre, and turned around, and he's done everything, and just went to Utah with his family for Christmas and skied, and just different person, different person. And what was his comment in the beginning? What is going to make this one different?
Right.
Will this one stick? Why will this? Because they've done it. He's done it so many times.
Hmm.
So many times. He got, I think his initial insult to his system, he got some antibiotics in college, a couple rounds close to back, and everything changed after that. And so not only did he have type 2, but he had a very unusual, well, not that unusual, but a distinct onset that you have to deal with as well. So there was some gut stuff, all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And your
But
program, you're incorporating fasting, you're incorporating dietary changes. Are you
we change what you eat and we change when you eat.
mhm.
That's important if you're willing. We can
Right.
work with anybody. What you eat, and we'll go into that. We haven't even talked about that. When you eat, 3 meals a day, skipping breakfast alternately, not every day, going into full fast, which are a day or more, which is well more than 24 hours, into extended fasting. I've gone through up to a 30-day fast myself. I work with people up to 30 days. That's not a standard program,
That's
but
amazing.
they want to help.
Right.
Right? I've worked with hundreds of people through extended fasting, 3 days or more, if not thousands, and tens of thousands with intermittent and rotational concepts that are in the program, and just amazing stuff. Some people, just by going to 3 meals a day and doing some of the basic intermittent rotational concepts, they lose. One woman lost 65 pounds in 9 weeks.
Mm,
40 of a 14-week program,
huge.
and that's all they did. They still ate the junk. I'm like, just imagine if you would
That
change
wasn't
that
even
too.
unhealthy food. So
Just the magnifiers.
30
The other
days.
magnifier is this. We talked about that's why I see the if we can go a sidetrack, I see these commercials for Go Low, that is a new weight loss program, and everyone and got all these, and their testimonials, they look good, the before and after look good, and they say, well, I lost 54 pounds in 62 weeks, and da 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 da. I said, 54 pounds in 62 weeks? I'm like, man, I'm surprised they even finished the program. That's so slow. We see weight loss go so fast.
Mm.
We can't even explain it calorically. It's
It's
not
well done.
unhealthy.
I mean, if I was to ask you, I'd say, "Hey, bud, would you just take this 10-pound weight and just carry this around for me for a week or two? Would you? I just need you to carry this around." You'd be like, "Are you crazy? What are you doing? Yeah, I don't want to carry this around for you." But people are happy to carry around 50, 60 pounds for themselves um, throughout their lives. Let's carry it. Let's just carry it. Hi, I'm Adam, and these are my extra 62 pounds. And I know it maybe sounds a little insensitive because there's all kinds of factors and emotional, et cetera, that go into that. But in the reality, it's
Not
caring.
as much as you think.
Yeah.
Not as much as you think. One of the things we've noticed, emotional eating most of the time is a symptom, not the cause of the issue. That when their hormones, like insulin and the other hormones, get to play nice again, when they're back on the playground, emotional eating disappears without any therapy, without looking at it, without treating it. It's a symptom, that like that motivation, like that low energy. One of the best TV shows I've ever seen, if you want to witness this. And I met Drew myself, and we spoke at the same conference. Great guy, way too pretty, but great guy. Fit to Fat to Fit. Fit to Fat to Fit. Trainers that were super fit all their life,
Hmm.
like beautiful, ripped, never been fat. They found what they did is they put on 70 pounds over 4 months, got fat, fit to fat, couldn't work out, couldn't do anything. They intentionally put on this weight, and then they went through their program with someone to get fit again. Fit to fat to fit. Not just him, he was the first one, but all these different trainers, men, women, and they went through, and you can watch it. You can watch it. As they got out of shape, as they got insulin resistant and put on weight, they got depressed. Their energy dropped. They didn't want to do it. One guy split up with his fiance. They started to change until it got to that end point. It wasn't that they were depressed and then got fat. They got fat, and that's what drove the depression.
And you're saying it's not just they're looking at themselves saying, I'm fat. It's that actually those insulin levels are creating the depression and creating a lot of that emotional eating.
Oh yeah, it's not a self reflection thing. This is a fundamental physiology change that's going on.
Mm,
Indecision, procrastination, lack of motivation. Not about body image. All of those change when you're in this metabolically unfit state
mm,
of insulin resistance. They changed. And when they got out of shape, we got back into shape after they were out of shape, all of it went away.
mm.
It was they were back to themselves or better. all of them. And you could watch that process happen over whatever it was, 8 months. And I thought it was phenomenal. I watched it like 3 times all the way through. I sat with this guy at dinner, at the speaker's dinner, and we just he's a great guy. I told him he loved to hear it. And it's just, I think, one of the most insightful things on weight loss and hormones that I've ever seen. Think of a kid. I have 2 sons. When they go through puberty, they eat. And man, there's jokes about it, but they eat a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, everything. And my daughter did too, not just boys. Now, do they eat because they're growing, or are they growing because they're eating?
It's a good question.
Right. So if they were growing because they're eating, the kid who ate the most would be the biggest, the tallest. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
They're going through a hormonal change that makes them eat more.
Mm.
When it's over, they don't eat like that.
Right. Boy, that's a
Right.
relief. What you're saying is such a relief for so many people, right? They just think that they're messed up emotionally and that they just don't have
You are not a
self-control. And
procrastinator. You don't have poor will. You did not fail. You you might have done a diet that failed you, but you did not fail. It's not you. These are symptoms of it. You can't, it's hard. It changes how we think, feel, and behave.
hmm
Right?
so,
There's an addiction element to it.
so what's happening? What's happening? So the insulin is creating this.
Mhm.
Fascinating.
Food is the most addictive substance on the planet. I work with a lot of people in recovery, and I know how bad it is. So, this is not a judgment factor. When you eat, you get a double whammy of hormones that you don't get with drugs. If you heard about serotonin, we hear about it in the brain, but serotonin is very important in the body. Serotonin, serotonin relaxes us. Okay, you ever see the Joe Pesci commercials where you're not yourself when you're hungry, where he turns into Joe Pesci's nasty and mean? They give him one bite of candy and he's back to normal,
Right.
right? You ever have that? Ever felt hangry?
Oh yeah.
Ever been snippy with the kids when you just needed to eat and you eat something and within a bite or two you're just like, okay, let's go back, let's talk, whatever it is.
Little drug.
That's a hit. That's a hit, a drink, a swig, a puff, whatever you want to call it, because nothing's getting into your system, right? Here's what happens: you get hangry, you eat it, and almost instantly, within seconds, feel better. That didn't get chewed up into your stomach, through your intestines, into your liver, and out to your body, into the cells for you to feel that way, right? It happened like that. Hormones kicked in, serotonin in your body, not your brain. When that sugar hits your brain, now you get number two whammy. That's dopamine. So now you just got the from serotonin, and your brain goes, I like that. It feels good. Feel good. Massively powerful. That's a natural response. It's in our body. It's programmed to keep us alive. It kept us from dying during winters. Fruit. Fruit is the addiction pathway. Fructose.
hmm
Okay. We're designed that when we see fruit and eat fruit, we want more and we eat all we can. Because if we don't, we won't get fat. We won't get through the winter. Right. That's why fructose is 2.5 times sweeter than glucose or other sugars. It um, when you eat it, it turns off your satiation hormones. Right. So you don't get full. You start eating fructose, you won't get full. And it turns on your hunger hormones. So not only are you not getting full, you want to eat more because and then you get hungry.
So would you be
It,
more for low sugar fruits like kiwis, berries, grapefruit, that kind of thing?
it depends on the profile of your life. It depends on what else. It's not about that fruit you're eating right now. It's about everything else. If you're eating all the best fruit in the world, but you're also eating pizza every night, guess what? It's not the fruit that's getting you,
hmm
right? So yeah, the lower sugar, the better. The less bread, the better. Like the conventional bread, like an apple, a delicious apple, 50 times sweeter than an indigenous apple. We bred them that way,
We
right?
did.
There's nothing natural about that because we like them and they're bigger and they grow better, stuff like that. So the fructose pathway, fructose only doesn't have a single metabolic pathway or reaction in the body that needs fructose. Absolutely none. It doesn't get used for energy most of the time either. So it's not sugar, sugar, sugar. It doesn't get used for energy. It gets
So we
right.
break
That's
it.
what causes the.
So we break it down.
Yeah, yeah. Your body will prioritize it immediately because it's a toxin, right? And as it breaks it down, it stores it as liver fat.
Mm.
That's
So
where it goes.
I think it's a disaccharide, I believe. So
Hmm?
it gets broken down. And but fruit. I mean, do you eat fruit?
Yeah,
Yeah,
berries. I like berries
you like
a
berries.
lot. Alcohol is fructose, right? It's that pathway. They're the same. There's no difference.
Mm,
Everything that we know that happens when someone has a problem with alcohol and alcoholic or whatever you want to call it, that's fructose. That's why the number one liver disease is called non-alcoholic fatty liver. All they're doing is just differentiating the name. It's the same thing as a chronic alcoholic going down the same path. It's the same pathway, same metabolites, same process. Alcohol doesn't get used for energy either. It, it's toxic, so the body breaks it down immediately and does whatever it can with it. It doesn't prioritize it like it wants it, like it likes it more. No, it has to get rid of that. It can't be in the system.
mm.
And fructose is the same pathway, same thing.
So this is incredible. I mean, I'm really taken further here, and I think to even go further, I think people should contact you. I've already been giving your name out a lot just to work with people. I mean, I love people. I work with people with gut healing and some weight loss, but you are just ensconced in it, and I would love to just share with people. How do we contact you?
Yeah, Facebook is the best way to contact me. You can do through Messenger or my personal profile, or my group is Insulin Friendly Fasting Secrets. I run my programs through Facebook. That's where I live for business and personal. So that's a good
Yeah,
way.
I've seen. I mean, you threw a comment, and there's just like so many people responding. It's incredible. I'm like, oh wow, there's 200 people
I've been
responding.
taking a nap on it for a while for over the new year and holidays, but I'm coming back at it. But I have my groups and I run the programs through there. That's the best way to. I see it all the time. It goes to my phone, everything. So that's a good way. My website is insulinfriendlyliving.com. Insulin Friendly Living, you can get me there. We're just relaunched it this year, and it's going to be pretty exciting. Got a lot of stuff coming that way. Got more content I know what to do with, so we're trying to figure that out.
Beautiful.
So, but back to if you like social media, I got a lot of heat over one of my pictures I made about this topic.
Mm,
It was a kid in the middle. One hand had a beer, and one hand had a soda, and it basically said, "If you're okay with this, you got to be okay with this," because they're the same thing. And people freaked out,
mm,
because they don't want to think that they're giving their kid a soda, that they're giving them alcohol with the
hmm.
same problem. Or
Addiction.
if they're giving them a juice, here's a little orange juice, here's a little apple juice, here's a little juice box. Yeah, might as well give them a glass of wine
Mm.
in their body. Only difference is you don't get drunk. That's the only difference, because it doesn't pass the blood-brain barrier the same way. That's the
Right.
only is refined out.
You're getting a dopamine hit. You're getting an addiction. You
It's
want.
cranking your liver. You're storing fat. Yeah, fructose gets stored as fat. It doesn't get used as energy.
Mm,
And the first place it gets stored is the liver, then
mm,
the pancreas.
mm. So we really need to go
Think
to.
about look at bears. Bears that hibernate and they get fat and insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. How do they get there? They don't do it eating salmon. They eat all the berries. They put on their weight by eating berries, by blueberries,
Mm, and that
lots of
gets
them,
them to the winner.
because it causes insulin resistance,
Mm.
fatty liver. It causes these things. We know that.
So we've experienced Dr. Don Clum here on a wonderful intellectual level and realize that he has a huge heart and he holds people's hands through the whole experience of losing weight, of learning about the body, taking traveling through their body and really knowing, okay, I'm burning fat in my liver right now, on my pancreas right now. And I'm just thrilled to have you. And next time I'm really, gosh, I want to have you again. I really want to talk about fasting because this is just, to me, it's just made such a radical difference in my life. I think last year I did 5 or 6 72-hour fasts, and it's giving me just tingling energy and health. So let's cover that next time. I appreciate you guys being
Yeah,
here.
I'll tell you how to prepare for a fast, what to do during the fast, how to avoid all the stories that people talk about, the downside of fasting, and how to break your fast. If you don't break it right, might as well not do it. I'll tell you why we fast. We'll go into all that.
Beautiful. Let's do it. Thank you for being here. Make sure and listen to this on Spotify, on iTunes, or watch it on YouTube. So appreciate you being here, and stay tuned for next time on Health and Care Conversations with Dr. Adam Fields. All right, that was good.
I wasn't even watching the time. I don't know. I
That was
tried to stay on point.
that
It's
was at
hard.
least that was at least an hour. So no, you were freaking interesting, and I mean that's just like people are just gonna just completely just with bated breath listen to the whole thing. Technically speaking, it if there's any way you can get your eye a little more to the camera, that would be good.
Was I not looking in?
Yeah, but just a little. Here, let me see something.
Yeah, I can do it. You should have told me that earlier.